Welcome back to Threes In. Bobo's here. So now I'm going to pick up where I left off with the discussion of UPT 54 years ago when I was going through tweets at Randolph Air Force Base. On the 6th of July, I flew 1.4 with John McBroom, Boomer, and I had 10 landings. So that kind of tells me it was a pattern-only ride. Then on the 7th, I flew 1.5 with John with 6 landings. And then on the 8th of July, 1.2 for 11 landings. Boy, that's a lot of hurling at the runway. At any rate, continuity was really hammered in when I went through UPT. They tried to see that you flew every day almost. Certainly every other day, or they tried not to let 2 or 3 days get between flights. And we really appreciated that, but sometimes you just couldn't get around it. Anyway, 54 years ago, on the 6th, 7th, and 8th, it looks like I was one happy camera hurtling my little pink body toward the runway. Okay, now I'm going to gravitate to a book that I bought right after I got to UPT, and it's called The New Tigers. I've made reference to this in a couple other presentations. It's by Herbert Malloy Mason Jr. One of the things I did when I was a squadron commander there in San Antonio, I looked him up and called him. And one of the things I regret is I didn't follow through far enough. I don't know if it would have worked out. I'll never know. But I wish I would have worked it to where I could have taken him for a ride in a 38. That would have been so cool. I don't think he was that old. I think it would have worked out fine. But at any rate, we had a great conversation, and I got to tell him how much I appreciated his book. I think, just glancing through this, that he, in fact, did get a ride in a 38 during the writing of this book. But one of the things I discovered here reviewing the book was an appendix, Appendix 4, Undergraduate Pilot Training Schedule. And in this schedule, I found just a trove of information that really dovetails in with what I'm trying to talk with you about here, about my experiences in UPT. Specifically, he mentions that under flight training, policies and procedures in the T-41 was 5 hours of academic instruction. Contact flying, just stick and rudder, was 30 hours, and that's what I received, right on the dot. And they said total hours in contact T-41 was 60 hours. And what they do here is they count the flying hours, and then they count an hour for briefing and debriefing. And then it gets on, the next course we took was Policies and Procedures T-37 for 12 hours and 45 minutes. That was interesting. And so forth. And I'm going to be expanding a little bit more on these flying hours and total hours as I go through this thread here. But on the second page, it was kind of interesting for me to see integrated throughout the whole course were subjects like airmanship for 17 hours, aviation psychology, T-37, 25 hours, physiological support, 10 hours, aircraft engineering, T-37, 19 hours, instrument procedures and radio aids, 14 hours, principles of flight, 10 hours. You get the idea. And then you come on down here under officer training. Orientation and processing, 25 hours. Heritage, 17 hours. Duty, 22 hours. Counterinsurgency, 11 hours. Drills, ceremonies, and inspections, 24 hours. Physical development, 125 hours. That's that PT I was talking to you about. And then marksmanship, and I'll have a little bit more to say about marksmanship here later in the presentation on UPT. But I was looking at my grade sheets, and I was wondering what was it that consumed our afternoons like in T-41s before we really got into the meat of the program once we got into jets. And then I found this appendix, and all of a sudden it started making sense. They didn't just say, okay, you're going into the airmanship block, or you're going into the heritage block or the duty block. They integrated these subjects throughout the course, and that's what I think made it really interesting. Of course, this book came out in 1967, and I went through in 1970. In the 3 years, they dropped a couple things here, like they've got 11 hours dedicated to reciprocating engines. We did not have that. But one of the dumbest things we had, but it was kind of interesting, was Morse code. We had, I don't know how many hours of Morse code, and then you had to pass a test on that. Oh, that was challenging at any rate. So even from the time they wrote this book that I'm using as a reference here when I talk with you about pilot training, they had changes that I remember or I can see that were in this thing. And of course, you got a couple of things here, and I'll talk to this a little bit later here. Link Trainer T37, 22 hours and 30 minutes. Yay. Link Trainer T38, 32 hours and 30 minutes. Double yay. Option training. I wonder what the hell that was. I don't remember that. At any rate, you get the idea. Our days now, as we got into tweets, were really, really defined. Early week, late week. Early week, we'd show up about 5:30, 6 o'clock in the morning, and then had about an hour and a half break for lunch. Had to go home, change from our flight suits into our 1505s, our khaki uniforms, and then come back, and then we probably had 3 hours of academics, and something maybe to do with the aircraft that we're working in at the time, and then officership and or heritage duty and so forth like that. So that's kind of the way our days were structured in July 1970. I was really busy in those days. Anyway, I loved all of it, as many of us did. So this is Bobo this afternoon. Hoping you're having a great summer. Base gear. Stop.